Hey everyone, welcome to another Johnny Appleseed Organic Invitational video here on the Urban Gardener. I'm Enoch and I'm really glad to be here with you. I'm glad you're all here with me here on our channel to follow along with this great invitational adventure we got going on this year. I'm inside of one of Johnny Appleseed Organic's big 45-gallon fabric pots that they sent out for us to do a couple of our categories in. So we've got a few of these pots. I'm gonna have to fill up here real soon, but I've got some ideas of what we're gonna do with this first category that we're talking about today on this video, our curated container arrangement. So again, these are some really good size pots here, really deep. It's going to allow for a lot of really good room for plenty of different plants for this container arrangement that we're going to be talking about today. So as spring approaches, all of our fruit trees and all of our spring bulbs are starting to blossom. It's really awesome to see all of the color start to come into season in our garden. Now with our most exquisite container arrangement for our Johnny Appleseed Organic Invitational competition, we are going to do edible flowers. Edible flowers was chosen because originally the competition was the most exquisite flower arrangement for a grow bag. So I kind of jumped right in and thought, you know what, we grow food here on the Urban Gardener in small spaces and in different containers, so let's grow edible flowers for this flower arrangement. So we didn't change our mind as they changed the actual parameters of the category itself to allow for just more imagination to kind of go there. We're gonna add some few different kind of unique things into our container arrangement, as well as a bunch of really cool, delicious, edible flowers. Now, I don't know much about growing flowers. I've actually just started adding some of these different flowers to my garden. So I'm reaching out to ask a little bit of advice from a friend of mine to see just a little bit more about what I could do in deciding how I'm going to make this container arrangement. So I reached out to Misilla Dela Llana. She's a Pacific Northwest garden blogger that I've been following for years. She shares so much great advice, and now she's even an author with her 4-season gardening book that she just put out recently, just came out, and she was willing to join with me here for a few minutes and talk about edible flowers. So okay, here we are talking with Misilla Dela Llana, joining us here on the Urban Gardener to talk about our container arrangement category here. Thank you, Misilla, so much for joining us here on the Urban Gardener.
You're welcome. It's good to be here. Thank you.
So as you know, I was selected for the Johnny Appleseed Organics first gardening invitational. I was one of 6 people who was picked to compete in 6 different gardening categories. And today on this video, I'm talking about the container arrangement category that we're doing. And I kind of got the idea that what I want to do is grow edible flowers. And when I thought about growing flowers, and I don't have much experience about growing flowers, and kind of thinking about being here in the Northwest as well, I thought it'd be a really great idea to reach out to you because I've been following you for so long here because of all of your great advice and all of the great tips that you give out about gardening and growing food right here in the Pacific Northwest, especially for me here in this region. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about edible flowers. Do you have any experience with edible flowers, or do you have any advice actually about edible flowers?
Absolutely. First of all, congratulations on being selected. So, may I ask a question? Which flowers were you considering growing? Which edible ones?
Right, so there are so many of them that I was kind of looking through. I've looked at different lists and kind of was considering ones that a couple I've actually gotten to try before. I do have a friend that grew nasturtiums up on his uh, it's a rooftop garden up in Portland, Oregon, and I got to try some of those up there. I thought those were an interesting flavor, so those were something. Plus, they have a lot of really good green too, so I thought that would be kind of something that could be a good low-lying plant to grow in the container. And other ones I was thinking of was like maybe bachelor button and calendula is too for something that's maybe just a little bit taller and more gonna grow up maybe as a centerpiece or something. But those are just kind of the first ones I was kind of thinking about right now.
Those are all great flowers, and I love growing them as well. With nasturtiums, you have the dwarf type, which grows to around up to 12 inches. And then you have the vining type, which can grow up to about 10, 12 feet.
Oh,
So if you're growing a container, maybe just consider the dwarf type, and it'll still
yeah,
have that cascading habit where you can maybe plant it on the edge so it
yeah.
kind of falls, over.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be really pretty, unless you're going to install a trellis on that big fabric pot.
Yes,
Then you
they
can maybe
are
put
again too. Yeah, they are these really large 45-gallon fabric
okay.
pots that Johnny Appleseed Organic has sent to all of us to use. So they are really big, got a lot of soil in them, really deep. So those are things I also too that I have to consider as well as when I'm growing these.
You know what? If you were to grow the vining nasturtiums and you're able to put a trellis in there and a
Yeah.
backdrop, they could climb up the trellis.
Oh, that's a
Just an
good idea.
idea. That
Yeah,
would look
yeah,
really pretty. So you have your backdrop that's going to be the vining nasturtiums, and
exactly.
then you plant the taller plants obviously in the back of the shorter ones. So
Right.
for instance, I think you mentioned before you might be growing dianthus or carnations.
Yes.
There's there's a couple or few varieties. Some of them can grow up to 3 feet tall. So make sure to research, which plants get that tall, and you can put that
Right.
towards the back as well.
Are there any of these kind of edibles or anything that you've got a lot of really good experience with in your garden?
We do grow nasturtiums as
Okay,
well.
awesome.
We do have a cornflower. I think you mentioned, yeah, bachelor buttons is the same thing as
Yep.
cornflower. So we
Okay.
have that on the front. And calendula, we plant that annually because it's too cold here. It doesn't really stick around as a short-lived perennial. Um, and then what was the other ones? You were thinking of violas also?
Viola, absolutely. That
Those are
is actually
great. Yeah,
another one I've actually got to
those are
taste
pretty.
and try before. John Kohler likes to grow those in his garden as well too. So,
Nice.
yeah, that was
Awesome.
kind of one of my first experiences with the edible flowers. In fact, was getting to meet with him
Oh, you
and
got
he
to
was
meet
showing me
them in
those sort of.
person.
Yeah, yeah, we've done a few
Oh,
videos here on my
cool.
channel with John. He's a
Oh,
really great
okay.
guy. Yeah, he's really fun to hang out with too.
Awesome. Yeah, he seems
Yeah,
like it.
yeah.
I was gonna say borage is also another great one. If you've heard
Oh,
of borage, the
mm-hmm.
flowers have a reminiscent of cucumbers. They're really
Yeah.
tasty, and
Yes, I've
those ones
seen
get,
those before.
mhm,
Those are really a
they're
very
really
pretty
pretty
flower
too.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the only thing is, since you're growing in that big container, obviously you're going to have to consider the sizes of each plant, and you don't want to overcrowd them so they don't fight for water and nutrients, and they don't
Exactly.
shade out the other ones. So you just want to make sure that you space them out properly according to the seed packets. They'll always have those instructions and spacing requirements. So make sure to pay attention to that. Other
Right.
flowers that we grow are chamomile, feverfew. These are medicinal herbs, so we use them for tea. You can also use flowers to infuse honey as well.
Mm-hmm.
And also want to mention that something fun you can do with flowers is you can make candied flowers. So those
Candied
are
flowers.
candied flowers. So yeah, you can brush or dip them in egg white, and you put in sugar and raw sugar and then let it
Oh,
dry. Those are fun and they're fun to use as for decoration for cakes
that
and stuff.
sounds
So
great.
something we've done with.
Yeah, so many things to explore and think about when it comes to edible
Yes,
flowers. And like I said, I don't have much
exactly.
experience with growing flowers, so this is going to be a real, as I've stated too before on my previous videos, this one's going to be the challenge for me, I believe, when it comes down to it, is growing some of these flowers. One of the things I also did want to mention and get into a little bit is that we are all going to be growing each of our flowers from seeds. And that's going to be something that's real important too. And I wanted to ask your advice on any sort of seed starting techniques or maybe timing type of things I should
Mhm.
be thinking about with maybe a few of these different types of edible flowers.
So that's a good point. So from thinking about since you're growing them from seed, so some of these flowering herbs will take longer to germinate than the other flowering plants. So for instance, I probably wouldn't start lavender now. It's a little kind of late. Usually you want to do that indoors about 12, 14 weeks before your last frost date.
Yeah,
Um, so I would maybe just start with the ones that are fast maturing ones, like
yeah,
nasturtiums. And what
yeah.
else did you? Oh, borage is a good one. That one matures pretty quickly. I mean, within a couple of months. So something like that. You can also try to incorporate even some herbs like cilantro. The flowers are edible as
Yeah,
well, and those mature in about 45 to 60 days.
yeah, those are pretty fast growing plant.
Yeah, and yeah,
And kind of go to flower really fast as well too once it starts to warm up. So yeah, that's probably a good
exactly.
thing to consideration. And really like those ideas there because there are more things to think about than just the flowers that you would normally think of, but those herbs and everything else as well too
Yes,
are
yeah.
great considerations for this as well. I really like that. And also, again, I was talking about weather considerations. We're both from the Pacific Northwest. Are there any of these sort of flowers you think are probably the really best suited that I might actually be considering based on where I live?
You know what? As long as you plant them in full sun and start them early enough as the soil warms up, most of these do well. Butterfly pea is another great edible flower. It's
Butterfly pea?
blue. Butterfly, yeah, it's from the legume family. And
Okay.
the flowers are edible, the stems or the leaves and the tendrils. So the whole plant is edible. So it's called butterfly pea. And you can infuse water with it and it turns the water blue. It's really
Oh
pretty.
wow,
So that's a nice one. Yeah.
yeah, that would be interesting to see that turning the water blue.
Yeah. And it's like I said, as long as you plant them in full sun, in fertile, well draining soil,
Okay.
I think pretty much any flower can do well, although
Yeah.
some will thrive in part shade. So I think violas thrive in part shade. Calendula will thrive in part shade, preferably full sun, but
Yeah.
it'll thrive in part shade. We had some calendula in the partial sage area of our garden.
Another thing also to consider while I'm also sowing these from seed too is do you have any advice about possibly sowing any of these indoors to maybe get a head start or something like that?
Absolutely. I would start them indoors right now because some of these flowers won't be able to go outside
Okay.
until the weather's favorable after the last frost. So by starting them indoors under grow lights, they'll give you a few weeks head start or even months. So if you're starting nasturtium, so they have that outer seed coat.
Yeah.
Some people use a sandpaper to give them a head start, so they'll sprout.
Okay.
It'll be easier for them to sprout,
Yeah.
or you can soak them in water for about a day.
Okay.
So that'll kind
Just
of speed up the germination a little bit. If you have any seeds that have that tough outer shell,
okay. So
that might help
either
out.
kind of scarify them as they would
Yeah.
say, or give them a good soak and let that
Yes.
shell soak that up really good. That sounds like a good idea with those. And again, possibly like the one variety, calendula, that like I'm talking about. You said that's kind of more of a warmer variety of flower. Would probably
Mhm.
really do well getting started right away now
Absolutely. Yes.
indoors.
Yes. I would.
Now, we've talked about some of these different varieties of edible flowers. We talked about some of the uses and all of that. Are there any of these that are your favorites?
I have so many favorites. Oh gosh, I pretty much enjoy all of them. I don't know if I really have one favorite flower. Um, but you can't grow this one from seed. But I love roses. But you can eat
Oh,
the petals. You can
yes, I do
harvest
love.
the rose hips. The rose hip is a good
Yes.
source of vitamin C. So
Mhm.
roses,
I do grow a lot of roses around the property as well.
so
Yeah, I love
pretty.
roses too.
But
They
I
are.
do, yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite one because I just enjoy all of them. And also they add biodiversity to the garden. They attract, pollinators, other beneficial insects.
Yes.
And when, yeah, and which can also increase your crop yields if you attract pollinators. So it's just so many things to love about them all.
Yeah, and flowers in general too, when it comes down to that, and that was one of the things I've been really exploring over the last couple of seasons is I was, really getting down and learning how to grow a lot of the food for myself, learning a little bit more
Yes.
about pollinators and getting more production out of my garden by just
Mhm.
adding flowers and it's really just kind of taking the garden to a whole nother level, being able to add all of that color and
Yep.
all of the other, like you said, all the bees and the everything that just adds to the whole environment around the garden.
Exactly. Yes, we've had very great results planting flowers in general. We get more raspberries every year. The squash plants or the summer squash plants, we used to have to hand pollinate them, and spread the pollen, but we haven't
Right.
had to do that in the last few years because we have more flowers now. So it really does help. It really
Yeah.
invites all the pollinators.
So, all right, again, thank you so much, Misilla, for joining us here for my container arrangement category video here on the Urban Gardener and the Johnny Appleseed Organics First Gardening Invitational. Really great to have you here and to get some of those really good advice on all of those edible flowers and everything. But I do also want to mention that you did just write a book recently and it just came out. I haven't had a chance even to get my own copy of it yet, but you have a lot of really great advice. I've been following you for years here in the Pacific Northwest on growing your own food.
Well, thank you so much for having me and congratulations on this competition. I'm really excited to follow along your journey. And also, thank you for mentioning my book. It is Four Season Food Gardening. So it covers the basics of starting your garden all the way to planning or what to do in each season. It also introduces you to methods how you can extend your season throughout the year, as well as some cold hardy perennial crops, as well as fruits and herbs. So it's a lot of information there that I think people will like.
Excellent. And I really encourage people to check it out. Check out your book, or if you need to, find Misilla right down in the description below. I'm going to have a link to her Instagram. She puts out lots of great content there. I really hope you all go check her out. And again, Misilla, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, and thank you as well.
So right away, I want to follow Masilla's advice and get some of these seeds that I've chosen started right here indoors and under my lights here in our light station as we're waiting for the weather just to warm up just a little bit more for a few of these different varieties that we've chosen for our edible container arrangement for this category of the Johnny Appleseed Organics Invitational. So we're going to get sowing out a few different varieties, but I did already get started with a couple of different varieties already. I started a couple of weeks ago, pretty much right after the contest started, some dianthus seeds. Those I wanted to get early, so hopefully we can get some blooms out of those. It's a really beautiful flowing type of flower that I think will just really give a good accent to this whole arrangement. So hopefully those will grow out and we'll get some blooms out of those this year. And then I also did get some of this Bloody Mary nasturtium. So those are a nice hard seed. So I got those soaking this last week, and then I soaked those for about a day or so, and then I planted them out into a separate seed tray. But for this seed tray, I've chosen a few different varieties. of different edible flowers that I think will work pretty good. And I've got some kind of a color scheme I'm looking for. I'm hoping will work out all together when we get these all grown out, and hopefully have most of the different varieties that I'm looking to grow available for when we put together the arrangement in those big 45-gallon grow pots that they sent us. But I'm gonna sow out today this variety here, really nice purple bachelor's button there called Black Boy. So we're gonna try that one out. That should make a nice, hopefully, centerpiece for our big grow pot that we have. And then another variety here of stalks. This is just kind of a mix of different stalks that they have. And but all the different colors I think will work well with the different arrangement that we're going to have. And then this variety here I have, but I think it'll work. You know, I had the seeds already, but I think will work within the whole arrangement with the colors, because it's got some purples in there, but as well as some like pinks and whites. But this is a strawberry blonde calendula. So we'll sow out some of these calendula seeds. And what I want to have kind of growing around the base to kind of bring it together, and as well with some of those colors too that should work well with the bachelor's button, the stalks, the calendula, are these viola that I've got here, brushstrokes viola. All these really nice striking colors will make a nice little bed around our around the base of our container arrangement. So hopefully those will grow really well. And then I'm going to put in a different container other than this seed tray here, but I'm going to sow out some of this blue spice basil. And then I'll take some of these basil plants and we'll grow some of those out till they go to seed and add those into our arrangement. They should make a nice little kind of cool, small little bunching flower that's really delicious too. Some of these basil flowers, as well as a variety of arugula. Arugula makes some really nice, tasty, edible flowers as well that I'm gonna grow out into some different seed trays. But that should give us a good variety for us to get started with here. I'm gonna sow these out, and you know, we'll keep our eye out on some different other varieties as well that we can put into our whole container arrangement. So now that we've got some of our varieties of flowers that we're going to grow for our edible container arrangement, also now indoors, taking advantage of this nice day here, and I'm going through my seed catalog, thinking about some other different varieties of edible flowers that I could possibly put into this container arrangement category. And I thought about dandelions. Now, dandelions are a really nutritious and edible flower that we just don't think of because they grow wild in our yards and they're just out here feeding bees and all of that, but they're actually a really delicious flower that you can add to salads and all of that. And that I'll share a story with you about the first time I found out about dandelions as an edible flower. Now, I was in my real early 20s, and me and my daughter's mother were celebrating our 2nd anniversary and decided to go all out and spend a bunch of money on this really delicious chef-cooked dinner on this dinner train that was going around the Puget Sound area up in Washington. And it was a real beautiful night. The train was excellent, and we sat down for our salad course for our meal, and they brought out a salad that had dandelion leaves in it and dandelion flowers, and I swear the both of us looked up at each other in complete amazement. I mean, we just spent all of this money to have this big, wonderful meal, and the salad looked like it came from our front yard. But we did find out and looked into, and we're kind of amazed at the fact that dandelions were an edible flower and an edible plant altogether. The whole thing is edible. So if you want to think about it, get out into your front yard and pick some dandelions to add to your salad. You could do that as well. But for now, I'm going to leave you all here with that, and see you all on our next video for our Johnny Appleseed Organics Gardening Invitational. Thank you everyone for watching this video on our Johnny Appleseed Organics Invitational. And remember, these videos run every other week. And on next week, be sure to tune in and check out another one of our micro pepper farm vlogs. So, we'll see all of you next week.